I am perceiving the creation with renewed conviction, deliberating over whether I'd been taught a misnomer of lies the likes of which had formerly entrenched me in belief that we as humanity inhabit a spherical earth, comparable to every globe sitting atop a teacher's desk. As inheritors of the grand matrix, we are indoctrinated as children into speculative assumptions I have only recently learned were based upon a carefully crafted web of deceit, so all-consuming, our postulation of living upon planet truly unwarranted. Awakening makes one question everything thought relevant. All that one had once so innocently accepted in assurance as evidentiary truth. All must be reassessed upon the certainty that there is no absolute truth, especially when one evaluates the preponderance of lies emblazoned unto our unquestioned resolve as child mind slate. And so once again I find myself in that zone of nihilist persuasion, reality shattered and manifest knowing shaken to core, deliberating over what I thought seminal truth, the mother of all conspiracies. This challenge strikes at the core of who and where we thought we were as people. Our most foundational belief, the underlying structure to life upon the blue marble with angelic sun as its vibrant diamond center. Science informs us that planetary accretion happens when primordially ejected bodies are spit out from the core of stars, and that the Earth began as cosmological debris, which, gravitationally attracting enough mass, assumed orbit as planet around the Sun, which also spinning counterclockwise in similarly rotating planetary system, is itself contained in orbit around some grand universal center. A theoretical black hole, they assert in presumption, of such immense gravitational pull, even light cannot escape its destroying grasp. Have we all been held hostage to some secret societal Freemasonic accord? A deception so colossal, so pervasive, that only those in the know understand our collective situation. Do the, quote, global elite celebrate the achievement of planetary domination, flaunting insider privilege when hoisting flag over and in front of the United Nations building as throne of New World Order, depicting the flat earth as it really is, holding all nations in singular, circular embrace. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Fallen Angels TV. And today is the first day of what I'm sure will comprise a series of shows that I will be doing on the release of my latest book. And even though I published it on Rosh Hashanah, I am asking people to wait at least one more week before purchasing it off of Lulu.com. And it will at some point be available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and other places. But just give it a little bit of time. I thank all of you that have joined me today, that have come to hear about this particular topic, because I've done some shows on it, but now I'm going to cover it in a way that I have been secretive about, because I didn't want people to know exactly what I was working on in tying together, in relating the flat earth as topic to the book of Enoch. And so the title for today's show, The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch, that's the title of my new book. And welcome, Link, and the rest of you. Stephanie, so good to see you, sister, and Son of Yahweh, and Minnie Donut, and Donna, and all those that are in the chat room as guests, many of you that are numbered. I appreciate all of you, and those that will come later and join us in show, and that will also touch upon the archives. I appreciate your audience, and I thank you for entrusting me with your attention and giving me a chance to present. What's up, Mr. Rowe? Good to see you, brother. And so it's, again, it's an honor to bring forth this information to you and to have your attention as audience, and giving me the possibility of sharing the things that I will be in doing this particular series. I don't know if you heard, but I did a show just this past Wednesday with Rob Skiba on his program, Truth Frequency Radio, and gave him, basically the first opportunity to ask me about these particular issues and topics. In the last show that I did, I released, the names of the chapters, which there are 32 chapters in this particular book, and it is 220 pages, which that is U.S. letter size pages. And so we're talking 8.5 by 11. And if I were to publish it in the regular 6 by 9 format that I've released many of my previous books in, as far as that particular format, it would be well in excess of 400 pages. And so it's quite lengthy and covers a number of different topics and issues in great length, in very, very particular detail. And so, also I wanted to let you know that if any of you have any questions on the part of the Book of Enoch that is covered in this particular book, which is chapters 71 through 83, because those are the ones that are specific to, it's called the Book on the Courses of the Heavenly Luminaries. And it's that portion of the Book of Enoch which relates to the flat earth, and it's only with applying the flat earth as key for decrypting that portion of the text that one can even understand what Enoch is describing. And I'll give you an idea of some of what I'll be covering when I talk about that in just a short bit. But and also the poem that I opened this program with, there's like 4 or 5 poems that I wrote when I first came to this revelation, first was awakened to this particular premise as model for the earth. I sat down and just wrote, just put out those particular poems, and I think that they describe my dilemma, as well as where many of you, in studying this topic and understanding that we do not live on a globe, and that the biblical reality of what is relayed within the scriptures is that the earth was created first as foundation for the heavenly luminaries, the firmament which was established above it, that when you look at the order of creation, that it absolutely confirms this, even though the earth had become null and void, and the rest of the chapters of Genesis are describing its recreation. It is, and was a firm, fixed, stationary, and immovable foundation for the establishment of the firmament, and that the heavenly luminaries were then placed into the firmament after the establishment of of basically what Isaiah refers to as the curtain which was spread above the face of the earth, the circle of the earth, as the firmament. And so I'll be covering other things as well in relation to the scriptures, as I do in my book, because so many of my listeners, when I first started to cover this topic, many sent me Isaiah 40, chapter 40, verse 22, as verification that we live on a globe. And I have covered in the shows that I've done previously how in the original Hebrew, using the Strong's Concordance, when you go back, there are no words which relate to a globe or a planet, even though you can find the word planets in, I believe it's in 2 Kings, as reference to the signs of the zodiac. You don't find any relation, any reference, any scriptural confirmation of the earth in the shape of a planet or a globe. And the closest that you can come is the word ball. And that when you look up in the Strong's where the use of ball occurs in the scriptures, you find out that Isaiah used ball, the term ball, in 18 chapters previous, in Isaiah chapter 22. And so if he wanted to relate that the earth was a planet and in a ball-like globe, then he most certainly would have used it again, but he didn't. He described it as a circle, and then he says in this particular passage, which I'll read real quick, "It is he that sitteth upon the circle of the earth, and the inhabitants thereof are as grasshoppers, that stretcheth out the heavens as a curtain, and spreadeth them out as a tent to dwell in." And the passage before that, he says, "Have ye not known, have ye not heard? Hath it not been told you from the beginning? Have ye not understood from the foundations of the earth?" And so Isaiah is referring to the order of creation in Genesis, which, as I told you just prior, the earth was established as a firm, fixed, stationary, immovable foundation for the firmament. And that's why you have a description of the earth and the heavens together as in the shape of a tabernacle or a tent, and that the circle of the earth would serve as the floor of the tent, and that the firmament would represent the walls and the roof that are spread above it. And so, you can't apply that to the earth being a globe. And so, in this book, the one that I just released, I cover the full chapter of Isaiah 40, as well as other passages like Psalms 19, where it talks about the tabernacle of the sun, which I'm going to pull that up, because this will set the foundation for what I want to go into with decrypting the book of Enoch, the course of the heavenly luminaries, because this passage sets the foundation for that precisely. And so let me pull it up real quick. All right. The first 6 verses, which I cover all this in this book, the new one that I just released. It says, Psalms 19 says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line is gone out through all the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. In them hath he set a tabernacle for the sun, which is as a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof." And so in this passage, it is describing the circuit of the sun, and how that circuit is above the earth, and that he covers in his race, in his circuit, in his motion above the earth. He goes from one end of the heaven to the other, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. And so when you relate this passage to what Enoch is describing, you understand that because Enoch, in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, he spends these 12, 13 chapters describing the motions of the sun and the moon, and not the earth and the moon. If it in fact was, if the earth were moving in orbit, spinning as it orbited annually around the sun, then you would absolutely believe or think that Enoch would want to describe that motion, because why would it would not make any sense at all for him to describe the motion of the sun in a heliocentric world view, because from the earth, if the sun, if it's the center of the solar system, there would be no motion to it. It would just remain in the center, and the earth being in rotation and revolution around it, in orbit around it, that it would be the earth which moves that keeps the sun, that keeps the sun from having any kind of motion. And so, which this also applies to Joshua chapter 10, where Joshua is given authority by the Most High God to stop the sun and moon in mid-revolution above the face of the earth. And that when this occurred, there were no repercussions to the earth. And if it's the earth which is spinning in orbit around the sun, you would think that the Creator who created all things, he would absolutely know that he should give Joshua the authority to stop the earth and the moon and not the sun and the moon. But this he did not do. Which again, is all these things are verification that it is the sun and the moon which move in orbit, in revolution, in circuit above the earth, and not the earth which spins around, spins once daily as it annually orbits around the sun. And as I said, when the sun was stopped, the moon and the sun were stopped in the heavens, there were no massive cataclysms, no giant tsunamis, no earthquakes or pole shifts or any kind of massive repercussions at all. And according to the order of creation found in Genesis, the earth is much larger and has much more mass and is of greater proportion than either the sun or the moon, and that both the sun and the moon have to be much smaller than the earth, according to the order of creation, in order for the earth to serve as foundation for the heavenly luminaries and the establishment of the firmament above it, which is exactly what Enoch describes in the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries. And so, one other thing, before I go into the particular chapters and scriptures on the book of Enoch, that in relation and in connection to all of these things, there are many passages which speak of the stability, the immovable nature of the earth, and that if the earth were a planet as part of a solar system, and that it was in orbit around the sun, how would that make any sense at all for the Most High to create the earth even though it became null and void in chapter 1, the mountains and the seas and the oceans, everything is defined and given boundary in the recreation of the earth, which takes place and is listed in chapter 3. Even the grasses and the trees and the different things, the plants, all of that growing, the boundaries to the mountains and the oceans being set, the oceans being brought forth out of the depths of the waters. How would that make sense if you consider that the sun was created and established as the great luminary, as for the light which would rule over day? How is it that it would make any kind of sense for the earth to be created first, and then the star which it's supposedly revolving around is created on the next day and then put into the firmament above the earth? That it does not make any kind of sense. And so one has to really consider these things when you read the scripture and when you understand the order of creation, as well as the description of the earth as firm, fixed, stationary foundation, immovable foundation for the heavenly luminaries, how all of these things are related to even what Isaiah describes in chapter 40 of verse 22. It's only with understanding the geocentricity of the earth that one can make sense of all of these things as they relate together. And it's only with this understanding that one can then study and read the book of Enoch, the courses of the heavenly luminaries, and then make any kind of sense out of them at all. Which is why, in being led to this revelation, that I stopped immediately the work that I was doing on my other books, because I was working on 2 at the time, one on the War in Heaven, and I was close to being done with them and to publishing them, but I felt like this revelation was so important and so necessary, since so many people are now being led to study of this topic. For whatever reason that is, it has flooded into the collective conscious of humanity in this day and age. And so a lot of people are beginning to study and to open themselves to these kind of possibilities. And another thing that I've discovered in researching this topic on YouTube is that most of the flat earth researchers, I would say the majority of them, they are agnostics and atheists, and they divorce intelligent design, and that we are humanity was created in the image of our Maker, of the Most High God. They, even though they believe in the flat Earth, they do not believe in the biblical scriptures in any way, shape, or form. And so they approach the topic of the flat Earth and study of it from a completely different angle than what I present in this book. And so I wanted to restore some balance to the discussion of this topic as well. And so that's why I, stopped immediately what I was then working on and began to write this book. And as I talked about in the show that I did with Rob, another thing, and I've already covered this in some of the other shows, and I'm not going to go into great detail on it again, but I was able to discover Bible codes which also, as keywords, they were related to the information that is contained within this book. And I'm going to post a link in the chat room to the particular translation that I used for this book, because this is the one that I'm going to be reading from. If you don't know, there are a couple of translations of the Book of Enoch which are found and available, and the chapters are numbered differently. And so in order to follow along with what I will be speaking about, it's important that you pull from the same translation. All right, so let's go into this. Enoch talks about, in the first portion, because he describes the motion of the sun first, he talks about 6 gates. And there's images in this book too that help you to understand these 6 gates. But he says in chapter 71, this is the first law of the luminaries. The sun and the light arrive at the gates of heaven, which are on the east, and on the west of it at the western gates of heaven. I beheld the gates whence the sun goes forth, and the gates where the sun sets, in which gates also the moon rises and sets. And I beheld the conductors of the stars among those who precede them. 6 gates were at the rising, and 6 at the setting of the sun. All these respectively, one after another, are on a level, and numerous windows are on the right and on the left side of those gates. First proceeds forth that great luminary which is called the sun, the orb of which is as the orb of heaven, the whole of it being replete with splendid and flaming fire. Its chariot where it ascends, the wind blows, the sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north. Now this is the key, this particular passage, Enoch 71:8, because when you try to apply what Enoch is describing as the motions of the sun and the moon to the earth as a planet, and try to tie it in together with the heliocentric worldview, of the earth being part of a solar system, and that we're the third planet from the sun, and that we orbit the sun in such manner, it just does not make sense. And I'll explain why. So 71:8, the sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed towards the east, is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. All right, and so the sun sets in the heaven, which is in the west, and then returning by the north, meaning that, and so what Enoch is describing here is a circle, a revolution, as if you were looking down on the circle of the earth as described by Isaiah. So think of the earth as like a clock's face, with 12 o'clock being north, 3 o'clock east, 6 o'clock south, and 9 o'clock west. And so the sun moving from the east as it rises, it moves in arc, first towards 12 o'clock south, and then in arc towards 9 o'clock west. And then it moves north, returning by the north. It then in arc goes to 12 o'clock north. And then it comes back in arc towards 3 o'clock east. And so Enoch is talking about looking down on what is referred to as an azimuthal equidistant projection map, which, if you don't know what I'm talking about and you've not studied or looked into this topic at all, it's the same map which is shown on the UN flag, the United Nations flag, which I covered in my poem. The elitists, the globalists, global being, making a pun here, but anyways, the elites, they know exactly what shape the earth is in, and they flaunt it on the United Nations flag. And they do that as a way to laugh at the masses for our believing in the heliocentric worldview, which demotes the earth as the center of God's universe and establishes the sun, which we know that Lucifer is considered to be the sun god, and that the heliocentric worldview is part of Lucifer's exalting himself above the throne of God. That what he stated in Isaiah chapter 14 as, let me pull that up real quick. Well, anyways, in this particular passage, he talks about how he's going to, I've got it right here, so how he's going to establish himself. For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, and I will be like the Most High. And so the replacement of the geocentric worldview with that of heliocentricity was part of Lucifer's exalting himself above the stars of God and becoming like the Most High. Because now, instead of the earth being the preeminent body, object, and entity of God's universal system, now the sun has been given foremost predominance. And also, ever since the establishment of the heliocentric worldview, it has separated people from knowledge of their Creator, and also for understanding how we have special covenant, that the earth was created special for us to dwell upon, and that we as humanity, created in the image of God, that we share special covenant with Him. But ever since the heliocentricity and the establishment of this replacement system, science set the premise for other greater deceptions like Darwinism, and the whole premise that we evolved of a monkey. And now the whole neoteric theology is that the missing link and the reason why we cannot find this ape-like ancestor to unite apes and humanity, or chimpanzees or whoever, is because the ancient aliens, being our creators, that they were the missing link that jumped in and jumped the gun on evolution and created us in our modern image. And so all of these things are tied together with the strong delusion, because as Rob covered in that show that we did together, this one being the mother of all conspiracies as far as the flat earth and our world view, our perspective, who we are, where we are, those things, that even the elect, that most of the people of the world are deceived on these topics. And that even when I cover or talk to or try to share dialogue with some of my closest friends on these topics, some of them are completely unwilling to embrace it or to study it or to open themselves to such possibility. And so this is a topic which creates great division amongst the brethren, amongst the fellowship of Christians, modern Christians worldwide, and just people in general. And that I know because I was in I shared these same sentiments. I was absolutely unwilling for the longest time to look into and do any kind of research into the flat earth. And it's only after many of you really hounded me and kept almost begging me to give it consideration, and you appealed to my sense that, like in my fourth book, Lucifer, Father of Cain, I spoke about how all of us needed to keep an open mind, and that that the height of ignorance is to close oneself off from that research, or to go ahead and have a bias which prevents one from looking into it. And just as it says in Proverbs, he that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is a folly and a shame unto him. The same thing. There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all argument, and which cannot fail to keep man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is condemnation before investigation. And so you, as listeners, appealing to that aspect of the work that I had already done and released in connection to other very esoteric and challenging topics like pre-existence, predestination, Cain being a child of the devil, that's what got me. And so instead of being a hypocrite, I went into it with open mind, decided to give it 2 or 3 days to really, because I felt like I'd be able to overthrow this argument, and I'd be able to, just really throw it out the window and not have to deal with it again. But that was not the case. I would also add that Yeshua said in the Gospel of Thomas, the Pharisees and the scribes have taken the keys of knowledge and hidden them. They themselves have not entered, nor have they allowed to enter those who wish to. You, however, be as wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And so it's my opinion that we should approach every topic, even though we feel we already know better, or that we, if in studying it previously, that you feel like you already know the answers for, that perhaps we don't. And perhaps what we thought we knew is based on conjecture, and that it has no basis in truth. And so that was my discovery as far as this particular issue, this particular topic. And the lesson that I learned from all of this and in writing of this book is that a lot of what we think we know is based on lies, on a web of deceit that the matrix that has established so much of what is foundational belief, our premise for what we believe as reality, that all of that, much of it, is based on lies that has been perpetuated, in this case, for over 500 years. And so it was a big lesson for me. All right, so back to some of this in the book of Enoch. And so when I understood that what Enoch was talking about with this azimuthal equidistant projection map was exactly what the United Nations depicts on their flag, which I would ask people to Google search right now the UN flag, and you'll see that it's basically the Earth in just a giant circle, as is described in Isaiah, the circle of the Earth, and that the very center of the map is where the North Pole resides. And what would be the bottom of the globe, or the southern tip, or the South Pole, that is, instead of being a point where the Earth meets and congregates and comes together, is actually the outer edge, the outer band, the outer ring of the ends of the Earth, the extremities of the Earth. And that when you apply this vision, this layout of the Earth, to the description of what Enoch describes with this circular orbit, the motion of the sun and the moon above the plane of the Earth, then it all begins to make sense. And as I've related in this book, you can read every portion of the course on the heavenly luminaries and make sense to it, as long as you apply it to that particular understanding. And so Enoch, when he was taken up to a high place, much like as Yeshua was taken to an exceedingly high mountain and shown all the kingdoms of the world, which this is another topic I should cover real quick. But anyways, Enoch was taken to probably where Polaris was. You know, because Polaris is the fixed star, being an unmovable star. It is the center of the firmament, of the celestial skies, and that all of the other heavenly luminaries, they move in rotation around Polaris as the fixed star. And so Enoch's vision can only be understood when you decipher it in such manner. And so what I was talking about with Yeshua being taken to an exceedingly high mountain, there's three other things in the scriptures which apply to this particular description, and which make more sense when you apply their occurrences to this worldview of a geocentric Earth. And those three things are in Daniel, I believe it's chapter 4, or maybe chapter 12, I can't remember. But anyways, in Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar describes to him a dream that he had of a tree growing in the midst of the earth, and that this tree reached unto the heavens. And he said that this tree could be seen from the ends of the earth. And same thing with Yeshua. When Satan tried to get him to bow down before him, he offered him all the kingdoms of the world. He took him to an exceedingly high mountain, and he showed him all the kings of the world, kingdoms of the world, and he said, if you will bow down to me and worship, I will give you all these kingdoms as they have been given to me, to deliver to whomever I wish to deliver them to. And so it also says in this passage that Yeshua was able to see all of the kingdoms of the world. Whereas if we were on a globe, even if he was, at the North Pole, how would you see all of the kingdoms of the world? You can't. And same thing with a tree. Even if it were, in the very middle of the earth and growing all the way to the very high heavens, you could not see it from every portion of the earth unless you understood that the earth was indeed a flat and stationary and fixed plane. Same thing for Yeshua's return at the end of days. And in Matthew 24 and Revelation chapter 1, it speaks of how every eye will see him, and that when he comes for his second coming, that it will be as lightning spread from one end of the earth to the other, and that every eye will be able to witness his second coming, his return. Same kind of thing. That makes a lot more sense when you understand that the earth is a flat plane and that it is laid out in a giant circle, and that every portion of it, if looking up, all of the inhabitants of the earth are straight up and down. Nobody's upside down. Nobody's on the bottom side of it. Everybody's right side up, and that looking up towards the heavens, that's where the firmament is. And so when he comes again with all of his saints and with his angels, that's why every eye will be able to see him. All right. All right, so let me go back into some of the book of Enoch. And so, the gates of heaven. I'm going to just read a little bit more of this and then explain it to you. I'm not going to read all of it because it will be unnecessary. You'll get it once I explain this portion. In the same manner it goes forth in the first month by the great gate. It goes forth through the fourth of those 6 gates which are at the rising of the sun. And in the 4th gate through which the sun with the moon proceeds, in the first part of it, there are 12 open windows from which issue out a flame when they are open in their proper periods. When the sun rises in heaven, it goes forth through this 4th gate 30 days, and by the 4th gate in the west of heaven on a level with it descends. During that period the day is lengthened from the day, and the night curtailed from the night for 30 days. And then the day is longer by 2 parts than the night. The day is precisely 10 parts, and the night is 8. All right, and so let me explain this. The 6 gates of heaven, this is how they are laid out. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat room. I'll answer them. Or if anybody wants to call in to ask me a question, I see that I'll know now if you call in and who's already listening by phone to the show. So, okay, and so the 6 gates of heaven as they are laid out. If you're looking down at the flat earth, at this map as laid out by the United Nations flag, there's a portion where the Tropic of Capricorn resides. That's the 23rd degree parallel of the southern latitude. And then closer, coming in a smaller circle, the Tropic of Cancer would be located at the third parallel of the northern latitude. So the circle which corresponds to the Tropic of Cancer is closer to the center of the flat Earth map, and it's a smaller circle than would be if you looked at three concentric circles for the Tropic of Cancer, the equator, and the Tropic of Capricorn. The Tropic of Capricorn would be the largest outer circle. The equator would be the circle directly in the middle, in between the Tropic of Capricorn and the Tropic of Cancer. And the Tropic of Cancer would be the smallest circle, closest to the polar north. And so, if you divide this area between these two tropics by 6 gates, you have 3 gates below the equator between the Tropic of Capricorn and the equator, and 3 between the equator and the Tropic of Cancer. For those that don't know, the Tropic of Cancer is where the sun is located on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. And when it is located on the winter solstice, on the Tropic of Capricorn, this is when, it's the winter solstice. It determines the day of the winter solstice, even though it's summer for southern latitudes. When the sun is located directly above the equator, that this is when we have the vernal equinox and the autumnal equinox, which divides day and night equally by 12 hours, or according to the division of Enoch's math, it would be 11.99999 hours. And Enoch talks about the changes, the differentiation of day and night by the division of one 24-hour day into 18 parts. And when you do the math, you divide 24 by 18, you find that it equals 1.333333 ongoing into infinity, 1.3 hours. And so when the sun moves through these 6 gates, the day or night increase by this proportion depending on where the sun is located in its annual movement back and forth between these two tropics. And so, hello Tulsa. And so Enoch begins his account of the sun's motion, and if you go and you read it later, you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about. And as I said, I cover all this in great detail in my latest book. And every one of the scriptures of all 13 of these chapters, which correspond to the book on the courses of the heavenly luminaries, every one of those scriptures is in this book, and every one of those chapters, and my commentary and my decryption of them, so that you can understand fully what Enoch is describing. And so he begins his account of the sun's motion when it is located above the equator on the day of the vernal equinox. And the equator is located exactly between the 3rd and the 4th gate. As I said, there's 3 gates below the equator, between the Tropic of Capricorn and the equator, and 3 gates above it. And so the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd gate, if you move up from the Tropic of Capricorn, the 1st gate is directly above the Tropic of Capricorn, the 2nd gate is in the middle, and the 3rd gate actually touches the equator. And then you have the equator, and then you have the 4th gate, which is directly above the equator, the 5th gate right above that one, and then the 6th gate actually touches the Tropic of Cancer. And so, as I said, Enoch begins the account of the sun's motion directly above the equator, between the 3rd and the 4th gate. And then it takes the sun 30 days to move through each one of these gates. And Enoch, the solar year during his lifetime, equal to exactly 365 364 days. Now, hold on just a second. All right, and so it takes 30 days to go through each one of these gates of heaven. This is why in this passage that I just read, Enoch describes, let me read it again and apply it to you. And in the fourth gate, through which the sun with the moon proceeds in the first part of it, there are 12 open windows from which issue out a flame when they are opened in their proper periods. When the sun rises in the heaven, it goes forth through this fourth gate 30 days. And by the fourth gate in the west of heaven on the level with it descends. During that period, the day is lengthened from the day, and the night curtailed from the night for 30 days. And then the day is longer by 2 parts than the night. The day is precisely 10 parts, and the night is 8. All right, so it takes the sun 30 days to travel through the fourth gate to reach the fifth gate. And this the movement of the sun through these 6 gates also corresponds to the seasons of the year, which according to God's calendar, which I cover in great detail in this book as well, the spring begins with the day of the vernal equinox. And then the 3 seasons, as it moves through the 4th, 5th, and 6th gate, and then reaching summer solstice above the 6th gate, that begins summer. Summer solstice begins summer. And then the sun moves south, descends through the 6th, 5th, and 4th gate, and when it reaches the equator again, this is the day of the autumnal equinox. Also, I need to state that it takes the sun exactly 1 day to either cross the equator or reaching the summer solstice or the winter solstice to reverse course and return in the opposite direction. And so this is what this portion of the book on the motions of the sun through these gates, this is exactly what Enoch is talking about. And let me pull up also. I have in this particular book the breakdown of those exact times. So let me pull this up real quick. And what they correspond to. Okay, just take me a minute to find it, and then I'll explain it. Because this is important as well. Okay, here it is. Okay, and so as I said, Enoch begins his account of the motion of the sun on the day of the vernal equinox and then he describes over 30 days for each one of the gates, which each season will correspond to 90 days, and then you have the 1 day that it takes to go across the equator or reaching solstice, reverse course. And so that's what the equivalent of 364 days to the solar year. And so what happened to change the motion of the sun to make it 365 days, I don't know. I speculate on that in the book, but during Enoch's time, and even at the death of Noah, the solar year was 364 days, which according to the calendar, which is described in Enoch, was perfectly situated and also perfectly aligns with the motions of the moon, which are explained in the second part. All right, and so let me explain the breakdown of these 18 units for the measure of day and night, so that if you look at this later, you'll understand. And I've got this broken down as a table. It says in my book, the first gate, the Tropic of Capricorn, it takes the sun 30 days to ascend up to the second gate from the first gate, and 31 days to descend down to the Tropic of Capricorn from the second gate. The day that the sun is positioned above the Tropic of Capricorn marks the winter solstice as the longest night and shortest day of the year for northern latitudes. Enoch breaks down the measure of this 24-hour period into 6 units for day and 12 units for night, which equal 7.999999 hours of day and 15.99999 hours of night, which the winter solstice is the longest night of the year. And if it were the summer solstice, this would be, flip-flopped. It would be almost 16 hours of day and 8 hours of night. And so let me go down one more gate. The second gate. It takes the sun 30 days to ascend up to the third gate from the second gate, and 30 days to descend down to the first gate from the second gate. Enoch breaks down the measure of this 24-hour period while the sun is in this gate into 7 units for the day and 11 units for the night, which corresponds to 9.333333 hours of day and 14.666666 hours of night. And so these are the breakdowns. I'll do one more, because there's only basically three divisions, and then they flip-flop for day and night. The third gate, it takes the sun 31 days to ascend up to the equator from the third gate, and 30 days to descend down to the second gate from the third gate. Enoch breaks down the measure of this 24-hour period into 8 units for day and 10 units for night, which equals to 10.666666 hours of day and 13.333333 hours of night. And as I said, when it's on the equator, the units for night and day, as described by Enoch, they are accounted as 9 units each. 9 hours for day, or 9 units for day and 9 units for night, which equal 11.9999999 hours for each day and night. Which, if you round that up, you get 12 hours, which is exactly what the solstice, the equinoxes, they divide equally the day and the night. All right, and so let me go down to the next part, and then I'll check the chat room if you have any questions. All right, and so when the sun rises in the heaven, it goes forth through this fourth gate 30 days, and by the fourth gate in the west of heaven on the level with it descends. During that period, the day is lengthened from the day, and the night curtailed from the night for 30 days, and then the day is longer by 2 parts than the night. The day is precisely 10 parts, and the night is 8, which I just gave you the breakdown for all of those units, which Enoch describes the sun's movement through each one of these 6 gates, and then its return back to the equator. So he begins on the equator and then describes its motion through the 4th, 5th, and 6th gate, and then its reversing course describes its descent from the 6th to the 5th to the 4th, and then back to the equator for the autumnal equinox, and then describes its descent into the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st gate, whereupon it reaches the winter solstice. And then he describes, which again is the first day of winter, and then he describes its ascent back up through the three gates. And so he describes, once it reaches the Tropic of Capricorn for the winter solstice, he then describes its motion back up, its ascent back up through the first, second, and third gate until it reaches again the equator for the vernal equinox, which completes the motion of the sun through these six gates, back and forth through these six gates, which correspond to the 12 months of the solar year. And so this is how to understand this portion of the Book of Enoch, which I'll probably cover the motion of the moon in the next show I do on this particular text. But anyways, continuing, I want to give you just a couple more, relate this from Enoch, the scriptures in this portion of the book, so that you can understand exactly when you study and you read it for yourself. It then says, then the day becomes lengthened by a second portion, so that it is 11 parts, while the night becomes shortened and is only 7 parts. The sun now returns to the east, entering into the sixth gate, and rising and setting in the sixth gate 31 days on account of its signs. And as I said, it takes that extra day. You'll see Enoch describes the sun's motion as being 31 days whenever it reaches the solstices or reaches the equinox. At that period, the day is longer than the night, being twice as long as the night, and becomes 12 parts. But the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. Then the sun rises up that the day may be shortened and the night lengthened, meaning it reverses course. And the sun returns toward the east, entering into the sixth gate, where it rises and sets for 30 days. And so as it's moving down back through the six gates of heaven, after reaching the Tropic of Cancer, it then begins to descend through the sixth, fifth, and fourth gate. When that period is completed, the day becomes shortened precisely 1 part, so that it is 11 parts, while the night is 7 parts. And then the sun goes from the west, from the sixth gate, and proceeds eastwards, rising in the fifth gate for 30 days, and setting again westwards in the fifth gate of the west. At that period, the day becomes shortened by 2 parts and is 10 parts, while the night is 8 parts. Then the sun goes forth from the fifth gate as it sets in the fifth gate of the west, and rises in the fourth gate for 31 days. See, it's reaching the equator again for the autumnal equinox, on account of its signs setting in the west. At that period, the day is made equal with the night, and being equal with it, the night becomes 9 parts, and the day 9 parts. Then the sun goes from that gate as it sets in the west, and returning to the east, proceeds by the third gate for 30 days, setting in the west at the third gate. Again, this description of its motion, moving from east to west, and then back west to east, that is describing its circular revolution above the flat earth plane. There's no other way to make sense of it, which is why, because of our heliocentric worldview, because humanity has embraced this worldview for the past 500 years, nobody has been able to understand this text. And that's why there's no books written previous to the one that I published. When you look for a book describing the Enoch's description of the motions of the sun, there are none. There are none available. Not on Amazon, not on the internet. there are no texts that have been written which help people to understand what he's describing. And it's because, as I said, the flat earth is key for understanding what Enoch is talking about. And it's only when one understands it in this manner that one can make sense of the vision that Uriel, the angel Uriel, gave to him, and which Enoch describes. All right, we're going to continue. As I said, if you have any questions, just post them in the chat room. And as I said also, the name of my book is The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. And it's released even right now on lulu.com. If you want to order it, you can. I would give it at least 2 or 3 more days for me to add one other portion to the text. But if you just, don't want to wait, you can go ahead and order it right now and have it sent to your house within a couple days. And then you can read, exactly what I describe in there of what I'm relaying on this particular radio program. All right. Stephanie says, I think I could understand it better if I could see. Absolutely you would. In some kind of video or maybe a set of drawings. It's very complicated to me anyways. Yeah, it is, and this is why nobody has been able to decrypt this text. And that's a good idea. I will when I create a video out of this show, I will, because I never do that. I don't take the time to do that. But I will actually link illustrations and portions of video that other people have done in describing this motion. I will overlay it to the exact parts of what I'm talking about here so that it'll make greater sense to you when you watch the video presentation of this radio program on YouTube. Because those of you that have been following my shows for a long time, you know that I usually just create a generic overlay of my shows and post them to YouTube as video for those shows. But I'll actually take some time to make the pictures and the illustrations and the video correspond to what I'm describing here. All right, let me continue on because I know I'm going to run out of time. All right, continuing. Then the sun goes from that gate as it sets in the west and returning to the east. See, that's a circular description. By the third gate for 30 days, setting in the west at the third gate. At that period, the night is lengthened from the day during 30 mornings, and the day is curtailed from the day during 30 days, the night being 10 parts precisely, and the day 8 parts. So once the sun has gone below the equator, the night becomes increasingly longer. And it's now the night which has greater length and duration than does the sun. And so the motion of the sun from the equator through the 4th, 5th, and 6th gate, that describes the days becoming longer. And then once it reaches the 6th gate, that's the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. What Enoch describes as 12 parts and then 6 parts. And then the sun, as it moves down through the 6th, 5th, and 4th gate, the day begins to decrease until it reaches the equator again for the autumnal equinox, is exactly 9 parts, which equals to 12 hours day, 12 hours night. And then as it descends through the third, second, and first gate, the night becomes increasingly longer than the day until reaching the first gate for what is the longest night of the year, or the shortest day of the year. And so let me read that in the last 10 minutes that we have. At that period, the night is lengthened from the day during 30 mornings, and the day is curtailed from the day during 30 days, the night being 10 parts precisely, and the day 8 parts. The sun now goes from the third gate as it sets in the third gate in the west, but returning to the east, it proceeds by the second gate of the east for 30 days. In like manner, also it sets in the second gate in the west of heaven. At that period, that the night is 11 parts, and the day 7 parts. Then the sun goes at that time from the second gate as it sets in the second gate in the west, but returns to the east, proceeding by the first gate for 31 days. And then sets in the west in the first gate. At that period, the night is lengthened as much again as the day. It is 12 parts precisely, while the day is 6 parts. The sun has thus completed its beginnings, and a second time goes round from these beginnings. Into that first gate it enters for 30 days, and sets in the west in the opposite part of heaven. And so Enoch here is describing the sun after reaching the winter solstice on the Tropic of Capricorn. It reverses course and starts to ascend back up through the 3 gates, the first, second, and third. At that period, the night is contracted in its length a 4th part, that is, 1 portion, and becomes 11 parts. The day is 7 parts. Then the sun returns and enters into the second gate of the east. It returns by these beginnings 30 days, rising and setting. At that period, the night is contracted in its length. It becomes 10 parts, and the day 8 parts. Then the sun goes from that second gate and sets in the west, but returns to the east and rises in the east. In the third gate, 31 days, setting in the west of heaven. At that period, the night becomes shortened. It is 9 parts, and the night is equal with the day. The year is precisely 364 days. The lengthening of the day and night and the contraction of the day and night are made to differ from each other by the progress of the sun. By means of this progress, the day is daily lengthened and the night greatly shortened. This is the law and progress of the sun and its turning when it turns back, turning during 60 days and going forth. This is the great everlasting luminary that which he names the sun forever and ever. And so that is the full account of the motion of the sun through the 6 gates of heaven as it travels first from the equator to the 6th gate, reaching summer solstice, then descends back down through the 6th, 5th, and 4th gate to the equator, and then for the autumnal equinox, and then descends down through the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st gate for the winter solstice, and then ascends back up through the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd gate to the equator, completing the year, as Enoch describes here in this particular text. Let me check the chat room. Let's see. You're welcome, Link. She says that will be so great, talking about me connecting this information to some videos and some drawings, and I will post it next show. I'll have it done by next Saturday's show, and I will share it with you. Also, I want you to know that we, yesterday to this evening, I believe it's this evening, is the Day of Atonement, and that we will reach the Feast of Tabernacles on the 23rd of September. And so that you should, even though we're under new covenant through Christ, you should at least acknowledge that. Just send up a prayer to the Most High God in Thanksgiving for the 7 Levitical feasts. Because if you don't know, if you have not heard me talk about that portion of the text, because I cover this also in this particular book, God's calendar and its connections to the 7 Levitical feast days of chapter 23, that Yeshua, when he came the first time, he fulfilled the spring and the summer feast. That he was the Passover lamb. He died before sunset. He was crucified and died on the cross before sunset. That sunset on the 15th of Nisan began the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Israelites, they ate of the Passover lamb during this time, and also sprinkling its blood on their doorposts. That's what kept them, safeguarded them from the wrath being poured out on the Egyptians, that the angel of death passed through the land of Egypt and struck down all the firstborn. That Yeshua was put into the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, his uncle, on the 15th of Nisan. And then on the 6th, which is a Passover, is a Sabbath, every 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th is a Sabbath according to God's calendar. And so he was resurrected before sunset on the 17th of Nisan. He was resurrected on the 16th as the day of first fruits, which is another one of the, these 3 spring feast festivals of Leviticus chapter 23. And then the Feast of Pentecost celebrates Moses and the Israelites being freed from the bondage of Egypt. And 50 days after they left Egypt, they received the Torah. The 10 Commandments were given to Moses. And so the Feast of Pentecost is to celebrate the receiving of the Torah and the Israelites becoming a nation and a people dedicated to Yahweh God, Yahweh the Most High, the Father. And this aligns with Yeshua's first coming, because it was on this day that the Holy Spirit filled the apostles and the other people of the nations. They heard them speaking in their own language. They were speaking in tongues, and they were able to be understood in their own language. And so that signified the beginning, the establishment of the church. And so Yeshua will fulfill with his return, with his second coming, the 3 fall feasts, which, if you don't know, they align with the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Trumpets, which also aligns with the trumpet being sounded by the 7th angel. And it says in Revelation, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Christ. And so that when Yeshua returns again, that's when the rapture event, or the catching away, or the protection of the church from the wrath of God, which is to be poured out on those not written into the books of life, that's when that occurs. And then the Day of Atonement, it aligns with the judgment seat, when Yeshua takes the judgment seat, and every knee bows, every tongue confesses, all are brought before him to declare and to be judged according to their worth, whether they will have and take part in salvation. And then the Feast of Tabernacles aligns with the millennial reign. And so all of these things, align with, and it's another reason why it's important to not only study God's calendar, but also these 7 Levitical feast days and how they are prophetically connected to Yeshua's first and second coming. And all of this material is part of this book. As I said, the name of the book is The Flat Earth as Key to Decrypt the Book of Enoch. And so I appreciate all of you, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me and join me for this show. And I will do my best to line up some videos and some photographic evidence so that you can better understand what I covered in detail in this particular show. I appreciate all of you. I pray that the Most High leads you in guidance and discernment. Remember, today is the latter part of the Day of Atonement, and it's a day that we should reflect on how to become closer in relationship to the Most High God, so that we can be worthy to be counted with the elect when the day of the Lord commences, and we are, counted. Hopefully, pray that we are all counted worthy to have part in salvation and to have an inheritance in eternal life. God bless all. Good night.